today. Where is it? Come on. I want your eyebrows up here. I want your volume up here. Do it again.
Hello.
That's better. That's what we're used to.
This is it. This is Shooting the Shit. This is our new relaunched Shooting the Shit. So for those of you that don't know, we have been doing Shooting the Shit for nearly a year now, talking about our feminism and our businesses and how we bring all of this together. And we've decided, rather than it being a kind of subsidiary of Grow Traffic, we're going to actually do this shit. We're going to do Shooting the Shit properly, and it's becoming its own entity. It's exciting, isn't it?
Exciting.
I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm beside myself.
All right. Good.
You're excited.
So excited. I barely know what to do. Like,
you put your mascara on. We're ready.
I've not moved, yeah, but I've put some mascara on for the occasion. Happy days.
Still in the jimmies from last week.
Okay, right. Anyway, let's get on with it. So first of all, Meriesha, tell the people who you are.
There we are. That was really well timed. Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Meriesha. I do telecoms, I do networking, and I make marmalade. There we are.
Moms. She makes the feminist moms.
All the moms. All the
Your
things.
moms have been a big hit, Meriesha, over Christmas. Lots of comments of people saying how much they love the feminist moms.
Is that what it is now? Rebranded.
That's what it is. Hannah, who are you?
I'm Hannah, director of Grow Traffic and all-round gobshite.
And who's that with you?
Hobbies.
There she is. Cute little
baby. Yeah, baby with big fat cheeks. A bit of fat baby. Yeah, and I'm Rachel. I'm also a director of Grow Traffic, also a raging feminist. So let's crack on. So today we are talking about incels and femcels. Now, incels and femcels are one of those things, I think, that they're words that people might have heard of in the kind of whispering about them, talking about them, but I'd like to think not many of us have encountered an incel or a femcel in real life. I'd like to hope that we haven't anyway, because by all accounts, they're not particularly nice people. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to tell you what an incel and what a femcel is. We're then going to talk about how they are kind of encroaching into real life. They're in IRL now. They're not just in seedy corners of the internet. And then how are we going to combat it? Why are they? Why do they exist? And how the bloody hell do we get rid of them? Because they're not very nice, are they?
Well, I feel like I'm about to say not all men, but enough. But I mean, I frequent Reddit, as you know, and on Reddit, I'm a member, or I follow the incel boards because I like to get cross. And on there, the people that post on incel boards are fucking vile. But that's not to say that all incels are vile, because so an incel, for people who don't know, is a portmanteau of involuntary celibate. So it's people that want to have sex but can't have sex, and it's mainly men, and they are involuntarily celibate because all women are fucking horrible bitches and whores and slags, and they won't shag these poor men, even though they're all really nice and it's all our fault. That's what an incel is.
But funnily enough, so incels, I mean, we are kind of skipping ahead a bit here, but incels, it was started by a woman. I was listening to an interview with her actually, and she started that she called herself an incel, an involuntary celibate, but she wasn't even really moaning that, obviously it wasn't an anti-feminist thing. She was a woman, or she still is a woman, and she was just sort of having a bit of a moan about how basically she couldn't get laid, and the whole incel movement was then hijacked by men on Reddit boards mainly, and on 4chan and 8chan, and it became this whole thing. So I'm gonna go first of all. Let's go. So, as Hannah's already said, an incel is a portmanteau of involuntary celibate. This information is taken from Wikipedia, by the way. They're members of an online subculture who define themselves as unable to find a romantic or sexual partner despite desiring one. So, as Hannah says, it's not their fault. It's all the fault of women because we are horrible, horrible people, and we don't want to sleep with them. So, it's nothing to do with the fact that they haven't had a wash or left the spare room for the past 6 years. Discussions in incel forums are often characterized by resentment, misogyny, misanthropy, self-pity and self-loathing, racism, a sense of entitlement to sex, and endorsement of violence against sexually active people. So apparently, according to the American non-profit Southern Poverty Law Center, they describe the subculture as part of the online male supremacist ecosystem, and included in their list of hate groups. So incels are mostly male, they are mostly heterosexual, and they are predominantly white. So have either of you ever encountered an incel?
Yeah.
IRL, you have? Like, I mean, not in real life, but I mean on the internet.
Oh, both.
Oh, really? You've met an incel IRL?
Yeah, have you not?
No, well, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, I'm presuming if I have, they didn't have the balls to tell me that that's what they were.
Hello, nice to meet you. No one will shag me, so I hate all women. like people aren't gonna. Like, I think it's an attitude thing. It comes across as an attitude, and it seeps out. And I think some people will be feeling a bit like that, but not know that there's a word for it, or not know that there's a subculture and a group that they can join. Sorry, Aubrey, I was poking that in a cheek instead of a mouth. And I think it's one of those things, a bit like, well, no, I'll not say that. I think it's one of those things where when they all kind of club together, they kind of, it snowballs, it perpetuates. So yeah, I've met people in real life that would class themselves as involuntarily celibate and would probably think, you know, it's women, women that don't want to sleep with them rather than, you know,
they haven't brushed their teeth for 3 years.
Yeah, they don't wash their hair, or they've like no personality, or they're aggressive.
Have you ever met one, Meriesha, that you know of?
I don't know. I don't feel like I have, or if I have, I'm like completely oblivious to it. And I think, like, you know, like I've said before, like I didn't genuinely know that there was a word for it until it came up in this conversation. I actually had to look online and do, I do very little to kind of research what we're talking about. But this one is like, I don't even know what the word means, so that would help. So I don't think I have. But you know, I think there's definitely that kind of attitude. I agree with what Hannah said. Basically, you know, I think there's an attitude that seems to come with this, from what I have read and what I have looked at, that is more a case of it's not my fault that whether it be male or female, it's a case of it's everyone in the world against me, and they're unwilling to kind of accept responsibility that maybe that they're the problem as opposed to the rest of the world. So I didn't know there was a word for it, and now I do, and I'll be looking.
You do. I mean, I must admit, there are lads who I have met in the past who did fall under this category, but this was kind of in the pre-internet forum days in a way, because that is how old we are. We can remember a time before internet forums. But yeah, I definitely think I have met lads who were very resentful of the fact, and as you say, it's about the key thing with incels is it's not their fault that they can't have sex. It is the fault of womankind as a whole, and that's where the blame is going, isn't it? So that's the kind of key thing with them. Let's move on. Let's move on to what is a femcel. So a femcel is something that I was less aware of. So again, according to Wikipedia, A femcel is a woman claiming to be experiencing inceldom, so involuntary celibacy, or volceldom, which is voluntary celibacy. And so it's basically the female version of an incel. Although incels were started by a woman and was taken over by a man, now if a woman is an involuntary celibate, she has to be a femcel. So this culture is so apparently there's an archetype femcel, and it is Rogue from the X-Men comics and the X-Men films. And so her involuntary celibacy situation is caused by the fact that if she touches anybody, she electrocutes them to death. So, you know, she's not allowed to touch anybody. But so she doesn't have relationships. She can't have sex with anybody because of this. And she is apparently the like archetype of femceldom. Although obviously IRL, femcels don't just electrocute people. They just can't have sex. And again, they say that it's society to blame for these problems. It's nothing they've done. It's all the fault of society that they aren't having sexual relationships. So again, anyone ever met a femcel, do you think?
I'm finding it hard to talk with a child on my nose. I don't think I have. Possibly, but not to my knowledge.
It does seem to be, and I don't know whether this is a societal thing or there's something to do with the people that we associate with. I certainly think I've met more men who would be angry by it than women who would be in that situation. But that might be something to do with the people I hang around with and the conversations I have that I would come across them. I don't know, Meriesha, have you ever met anyone like that, do you think?
I don't think I have, but I think that's an interesting kind of question, because maybe, you know, is the again the kind of yes, the conversations, and yes, the people that we kind of hang around, but also is it more shameful almost as a woman, you know, for someone to not, you know, for you to have those ideas or those views? Is it more shameful as a woman? You know, whereas men, it's expected that we should be out shagging around all the time, and that everyone, you know, do you know what I mean? There's other layers to that, I think, you know. So maybe there are lots of femcels, you know, and not necessarily violent. They just are and exist and get on with it, for want of a better term.
Yeah,
don't talk about.
That's a really good point, actually. There's a comment in the chat box saying that you know, maybe it's that women are more likely to blame themselves, and that layer of you know, societal norms is really important here, because you're right, men are expected to go out and they're expected to sleep with as many women as they possibly can and be a lad and, you know, have a laugh and blah blah blah, whereas women are not, and women will internalize that much more and be like, oh, you know, whereas men perhaps feel that it's much more of an entitlement, and therefore it's something that they can rail against and they can get cross against because they should be entitled to sleep with women. Women will be much more like, oh my God, maybe it's because I don't have a thigh gap, and maybe it's because I've got cellulite, and maybe it's because my clothes aren't right. You know, so the narrative perhaps is different for the different genders.
I think as well, as women, we are more likely to experience like that sort of attitude from a man, you know, who we wouldn't want to sleep with. I think that's possibly part of it as well, that, you know, we've experienced it from men because men have projected it to us, like, would you like to have sex? No, thank you. Oh, well, fuck you and all women then, maybe. Like, in a really kind of broad spectrum way. But yeah, I do think there's a lot of kind of internalizing the shame. But I think the thing with incels, and possibly this is true of many factions where there's male and female groups, with incels, it's vitriolic, it's violent, and it does spill out into violence against women, and misogyny.
Well, you've led us very neatly onto our next point, Hannah, which is...
planned it.
I know, it is almost as if we had a strategy, which we didn't, because we never do. But this is one of the things, is that, you know, for the last kind of 4 or 5 years, whilst incels and femcels and all the rest of that cohort have been kind of bubbling away on Reddit forums and 4chan and 8chan and stuff, they were always seen as very much... you know, a dirty little corner of the internet. This didn't matter. These were just angry boys, you know, sitting there on their laptops, having a little rant away. It didn't really matter because they didn't really have any impact on real life. But actually, they are starting to have a very severe impact on real life. So obviously, besides the fact that these people are real people who are interacting in the world, and they will naturally be taking those views out of the bedroom with them into the real world as they go out there. There are several acts of violence and terrorism that have happened in the recent years. So, according to an article I was reading in the New Yorker, the incel ideology has already inspired the murders of at least 16 people. Elliot Rodger in 2014 in Isla Vista, California, killed 6 and injured 14 in an attempt to instigate a war on women for depriving him of sex. Those were his words, and he did then kill himself. Then there was Alec Minassian, killed 10 people and injured 16 in Toronto last year. Prior to doing so, he wrote on Facebook, "The incel rebellion has already begun." And then there's also Christopher Harper Mercer, who killed 9 people in 2015 and left behind a manifesto that praised Rodger, the guy from Isla Vista, California, and lamented his own virginity. So these are, you know, disillusioned young white lads who have clung onto this ideology and are then going out and arming themselves to the teeth and killing people. So you know, we always talk about these things as being a kind of abstract ideology, don't they? But there is always a point where these will tip over into real life and real people end up getting hurt.
I think that's the danger as well. There are some Red Handed podcast, which is I highly recommend it. Did a couple of sessions on some incel murders. So if you want more detail, then they're really good podcasts to listen to. But yeah, I think that's the thing. I think as it's gathered pace and gathered acceptance, and they have their own language, you know, there's Becky's and Chad's and stuff. So Becky's
and there's an entire language to this, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think it's become more kind of cult-like and more accepted. Reddit continually shut down the boards, but they always come back. And one of the boards I follow is Incels Against Hate, and it's full of hate. And I think it's just okay to say these awful things, and it's not just it doesn't feel like they think they're saying anything radical. Like they will just say, like, they'll share like a meme or something, and it'll be norms when they say they're bored or they're lonely, and you know, like, they have no right to say that. They have no right to say that they're bored or lonely or horny or whatever, because they are, you know, they're not us. They're accepted by society, and it's society's fault. And it is just like just part of the psyche, just the language, just accepted that this is how we feel and this is the fault of it, and it's nothing. And I'm not saying like it is these people's fault, and it's terrible if anyone is that, you know, lonely and feels that sad and rejected and everything, but it's also not women's fault. It's not like for being so stupid and so like senseless and so blinded by abs or whatever. It is sad.
It is sad, and I mean, this is the thing, is it? So we were just talking before we went live, and about, because you don't spend a lot of time on social media. You do have accounts, but you limit it, don't you? And you were saying it's because of that narrative, the fact that and there is something about social media, we've talked about it before, and we will absolutely return to it, where I think perhaps because people have that sense of anonymity, they feel it's all right to say whatever they say. But the danger then is that the things that you say on social media become normalized. It becomes okay to say those things. You have people supporting you, and that then becomes a real life ideology that you take out into the world. And you know, how you, Meriesha, you know, have every right to say, I don't want to go on social media because I don't want to read that. That's fine, but that doesn't make them go away, does it? They're still there.
No. But that's it. I think it's, you know, that's, like you say, the social media conversation is one we'll have each time, I guess, really. You know, people are finding each other, and it's almost like, yeah, then they support each other. And I think sometimes as well, it's almost like people, I mean, it's a generalization as usual, but you know, most people when they comment on things, it's, you know, it's not because they want to kind of create rage and hate and all of this kind of stuff. You know, when you write stuff down, it can be taken out of context, you know, for lots of different reasons. But then I think when people will comment and then someone else will get involved and jump in, and then that riles up the next person, and all of a sudden there's this like mass of hatred going on that's like come off the back of one innocent or seemingly innocent comment, you know, that can destroy all sorts of things, worlds, lives, you know, all sorts of stuff that comes with that. And it feels a little bit like this. No, they don't disappear, they don't go away. But you know, when there's lots of people shouting into the void, is what it's almost like. And then how do you combat that? I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't have any answers, do we? But I posted a thing on our Bake Up Past and Present page a couple of weekends ago about a safe distance to pass horses if you are, you know, passing horses in your car, and it was like, try and have 2 meters apart. And then somebody said like, oh, I don't think horses should be allowed on the roads anyway. And then it just descended. This thread just descended into just abuse and insults and that, and it is, and then it becomes normal because you're saying it, people are supporting you saying it, and all of this hatred and abuse just becomes kind of background noise to our everyday lives. And so, yeah, I mean, again, that is a conversation for another day. The ironic thing about all of this, though, is that these incels, particularly, they are railing against feminism, you know, women, because it's all women's fault, and it's all the fault, especially of feminist women. And yet the ironic thing is that what feminists want is they want an end to that stupid, toxic masculinity and that stupid narrative that says that men have to have abs and women have to be sexy and have massive boobs and wear short skirts. You know, it's as damaging to women as it is to men. And yet those are the ones that they're directing the hatred towards, isn't it? When actually they should be hating the patriarchy and helping us dismantle it.
I think it's the entitlement, though, to sex. I think that's a big issue that incels in particular feel entitled that they should be able to have sex because they are alive, and that people should have to have sex with them for that reason. And if you don't want to, it's your fault. I think that is a societal issue as well, that all you see on the media is people having sex and people being attractive and people being attracted and people attracting others and stuff. And I think like it just becomes such a pressure, an overwhelming pressure throughout the year, you know, Easter with your family and Valentine's Day and Christmas with your loved ones and stuff. There's so much pressure to bond pair that, you know, I'm not surprised people feel this entitlement. It is a patriarchal pressure.
It is. So there's that argument then that we have, in a way, social media to blame and the kind of perfect life. I mean, this is the ironic thing as well, isn't it? The reality is that most of us aren't having sex 4 times a day and aren't living these perfect lives, but we show this image of you know, perfect family life and perfect relationships on Instagram and Facebook and on our social media profiles. So yeah, social media has some part to play in this. Do we also think there is also an element, is there not, that whenever a movement comes and a movement you know, gathers momentum and more people support it, there is necessarily a backlash against that. So think, for example, you know, Obama becomes the first black president and the backlash against that is Trump. You know, I know feminism as a movement has been around for a long time, but there is a new wave of it coming at the moment. And perhaps incels, do we think maybe it's just one of those natural responses to that and it will eventually die down? Meriesha, what do you think?
That's such a big question, is it? It's going to die down. It's like there's always something, isn't there? You know, let's face it. There's always something going on in some way, shape, or form. You know, to kind of get before to rally for, or you know, kind of not agree with at all. But I think I don't know. I think a lot of this conversation, I guess, you know, and people rallying against feminism is because they don't truly understand what feminism is. I can't even say it. Can't get my words out. They don't understand what it is. Yeah. Right. And I think it's that, you know, it's one of those things that kind of is just there is a sweeping generalization for the fact that we're all burning bras and it's all about women this, women that, and etc. When actually it's not, you know, there is a huge misunderstanding that I think comes along with it. And I was talking to someone just about, you know, ideas and thoughts and people's, you know, kind of acceptance of just stuff in general these days. And I think, you know, there's lots of people want to be educated and actually take part in the conversation and understand, to explore, but to do that you have to ask questions. And you know, there's a lot of people that now almost won't even stand for the questions to be asked, because you need to educate yourself. How do you educate yourself if you don't ask the question? You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes into it. So I think, you know, I always say that it's about conversation and education, but people have got to be open to having those conversations in the first place. And I think, you know, the people that are wanting or behind that kind of incel kind of idea is that they don't care about, there is no conversation, there is no learning, you know, that this is the way that it is.
It's a very good point, that actually, and this is kind of behoves all of us, and that attitude. I remember I was at a networking meeting a few years ago, and somebody came up to me and they said, "Are you a feminist?" And they kind of really like almost embarrassed asking me if I was a feminist. And I was like, "Yes, now sit down, let me tell you about my feminism."
You will really
honestly,
about the sub optimists.
Yeah. But the thing is,
work in a garage.
There is this attitude, isn't there, of, you know, you're absolutely right. People are scared to ask the questions because they don't want to offend somebody. That whole thing of, you know, asking people about their race, asking people about their religion. You know, I was listening to a thing the other day where they were like, "I'm fed up." It was a British black woman, and she was like, "Fed up of people asking me about my hair and touching my hair." She was like, "It's my hair." And somebody else said to her, "Well, how are people going to learn if you don't let them ask you about your hair?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah, well, all right, yeah. Well, they should, like Meriesha said, they should do their own research. They should learn it." Well, no, actually, the way we learn as human beings is by having those conversations. There should be nothing off limits, should there?
Yeah, you can't learn from someone else's experience if you don't talk about your experiences. And we're a member of a group for our sector, Rachel and I. And there was an enormous hoo-ha the other day because people were posting what is racist, but was born of ignorance and misinformation. And the admin of the group came out and said, you are not entitled to education here. This is not where you get this education. This is, and like went on and did a really interesting bit kind of live about why this is wrong, why you're misinformed, and explained it like really clearly, and then said, "But you know, fuck off, you're all banned and you're not entitled to education here, blah blah blah." And it was really sad that that kind of learning opportunity going forward has gone. And someone's just said that the boys are listening. I'm very sorry for the language.
I forget. We're just like having a chat, aren't we?
But the thing is, it's a really good point, that. But I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to have those conversations and those learning points. But just coming back to this point about the boys are listening and asked what's a feminist. I mean, Reese, you said before about people don't understand what feminism is, and Dali even said to me, and Dali would count himself as a feminist, and he said to me a few months ago, like, Well, the problem with feminism is that it doesn't feel like it's about men, or it feels like it's mostly about women. I'm like, no, the whole point of it is that it's to combat that toxic masculinity, and to ensure men are able to cry and men are able to express opinions just as much as women have equality. And it is that absolute thing. And that's the irony of incels, isn't it? Bringing it back to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that actually they are railing against the very people who are supposedly helping them. We want them to not have to have a six-pack and to be able to have a shag just as much as anybody else does. Okay, so if we've talked about, we are running out of time, so we have talked about whether or not we've met them, and obviously the thrust of this podcast, of this session, is what do you do if you meet an incel, either in the workplace or in real life, just in your everyday thing? And the answer is you talk to them, isn't it? Part of the problem is that we do confine these people to a tiny corner of the internet and say, that's, you're a perverted little bugger. You stay in your corner of the internet and don't talk to us. And actually, we need to bring this out into the light. And we need to have those conversations, and we need to be able to talk to people about it. And that's the only way we're going to combat it.
I do think, like, hands up, if you ever thought you were friends with a boy and it turned out that he wanted more from you, and when you didn't want to, they stopped being your friend, or they weren't very nice to you, like someone said about being at uni and that happened, like that's happened to me, Rachel. I know it's happened to you.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, isn't it, to put yourself in a vulnerable position as a woman where you say to someone, look, it's not going to happen, because often if someone is that way inclined, there are consequences, and the consequences aren't very nice. So you just kind of you feel vulnerable when you're around them. And I know when I've been in that situation, I didn't like being on my own with this person who was supposedly my friend, in case they got, grabby, or having a drink with them, because they did always get grabby. And like, it's very difficult, isn't it, to say to someone, like, I'm not gonna be your friend anymore, or this is never gonna happen, let's just be friends. Because if they've got that attitude, there's consequences, and that's frightening.
Yeah, but sort of people on the chat are saying that this has happened to them, and it did happen to me. And it was somebody who I genuinely thought was my friend, and then he did get nasty when I was like, this is not going to happen. In the end, I ended up locking myself in the bathroom, and I had to call somebody, my ex-boyfriend, to come round and get rid of him, because then I felt so uncomfortable. And it is. It's very easy to say, talk to them, but actually, as women, we are vulnerable, and we are a bit scared of being in that situation, and especially if they're, to the point where they're violent and going to get aggressive about it. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? We're running out of time, so
there's no way we can do this for half an hour, right?
I know. There's so much. After every session, I'm always like, we've got so much more to talk about. We'll have to come back. Somebody has said, it is about educating boys and girls. I think that is the key thing that we can leave you with, is have conversations with children. If you're our children now, Leon, my son, is 11, and he is on the internet. That's where they live their lives, and eventually they are going to come across this sooner rather than later. And we have got to have honest conversations with them about what is allowed and what is normal and what is an appropriate thing to say and what to do if they encounter this. And it is only by having those conversations and shining that daylight on it that we're going to stand even a small chance of eradicating this. If we all just pretend it ain't happening, it's not going away, is it?
I think as well, we need to normalize people that don't want to pair bond. They don't want a marriage, or they don't want like a long-term partner,
or a heterosexual one as well. We still haven't even normalized non-heterosexual relationships, have we?
Yeah, I think we need to make it so that people don't feel pressured into just settling for anybody. And because society says that they have to, and therefore when they can't get someone to shag them or to love them, then that's like the worst thing in the world. And there needs to be that needs to be okay, and there needs to be more support for people that are lonely, and I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach, final words? Anything intelligent to say?
I don't know about intelligent, but I think it is a massive topic, really, that goes into so much, and I think there's definitely it's about awareness. I think that's the main thing, and being able to have a conversation about it, if necessary, with kids, whatever. It's an awareness thing, really, isn't it? I think the media, I was talking to someone not long ago, and I think there's so much wrong, to be honest, at the moment, with having to look a certain way, dress a certain way. And I know it's always there, from being kids, and you've got to have the right trainers and the right hairdo and all of that kind of stuff. But at the minute, it seems to be so intense, that kind of, there's 13-year-old girls that look 25, and all of that kind of stuff. And there's the same pressures for boys as well. Do you know what I mean? I think it goes the other way as well. So yeah, there's a whole lot going on.
Luckily, Meriesha, that is what we are talking about next week. We are going to come back to
it's almost talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, next, isn't it? Is it not week after next?
Yeah, not next week.
I don't know. Sorry, not next week. Monday after. But yeah, we're talking about the kind of beauty culture, the beauty ideal, and what have Instagram filters done for our perception of beauty, because there was a big thing about that recently. Thank you so much to everybody who's commented. We've had in the comment box about sex, frequency of sex. Yeah, no, I'm not doing it 4 times a day. I'm not even doing it 4 times a year, I'll be honest. And porn. So those are definitely subjects we will come back to. Just want to leave you with some final bits of reading. So Laura Bates, who did the Everyday Sexism Project, she did an amazing book recently about that. It's called Men Who Hate Women. And it's about incels, and she spent about a year kind of lurking in there. It's a really good book. It's available in audio book if you don't want to wade through it. That's really good. There is also a book that is called The Blackpill Theory, Why Incels Are Right and You Are Wrong. Apparently, it's a really balanced view, written by a man, a balanced view on kind of not just dismissing this group of people. It's called Dr. Castle. So yeah, again, you can find that on Amazon and stuff. But yeah, it's about getting that male perspective. We can't just exclude them. We've got to include them in these conversations and have conversations. That's it. Thank you so much to everybody who has watched, everybody who has commented. Obviously, please keep watching and commenting. Share it with your friends. If there's a subject you would like us to talk about, let us know. Hannah, final word.
We've set up a new page with new branding and everything, so like our new page, subscribe below, guys. Like our new page. Let's have discussions, invite your mates.
Yeah, and it's coming audio as well. It'll be a podcast. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Goodbye.